broadcasting from an undisclosed location, from a secret hunting spot known only to him, and the guy who told him about it, and possibly the guy who told him. It's a show all about hunting in New Zealand and around the globe. This is The Hunting Show. Find The Hunting Show on Facebook and Twitter for up-to-date information on upcoming shows and topics.
Welcome back to another week of The Hunting Show. I'm your host, Stephen Spargo, and we got lots of questions about Vortex Optics following last week's interview with their marketing manager, or their international marketing manager. And I'd like to say you can find out information. All you need to do is go to vortexoptics.com. Check them out on there. They're very, very helpful. They are all about you. The interesting thing I found about Vortex, they weren't very good at talking about themselves, but they were very good at letting you know what other people have to say about them. They are imported to New Zealand because that was a question that came up a little bit, and the other one was, will they be at the Seeker show? And I'm not sure, but I'm fairly positive if you pop along to the hunting and fishing stand, you're more than likely going to see Vortex Optics, and if they're not there, they're probably on another stand. So check them out, vortexoptics.com, and their Facebook page is also a really useful place to get some information. The election results wasn't quite how I picked it. I was probably closer than some. I'm not going to tell you what I picked the split would be, but I was not anywhere near this massive majority that National got. I'm not going to bleat on about it. We try to be a little bit apolitical here. The Band 1080 party, a credit to you guys. You're a small party, and I know that your funding resources are nowhere near what some of the others like the Conservatives have, and you got some respectable polling in some of those electorates where particularly you had candidates. So congratulations to the Band 1080 party. I see Peter Dunn's there, and his interview with us a few weeks ago was very good. So thank you, the Honourable Peter Dunn, for your interview, and congratulations on yet another term helping to lead our country. This week's interview is Peter Ryan. Now, Peter is the author of Wild South, Hunting and Fly Fishing in the Southern Hemisphere. How are you, Peter?
I'm well, thanks, Stephen. How are you, mate?
Peter, before we kick off into your book and what people are going to see or read when they pick up a copy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
A fairly basic story. I grew up, as a lot of guys do, chasing hares and rabbits and things, and worked my way up through pigs and deer, and got very interested, got very focused, a little bit too focused, and just sort of went on a long series of adventures, I guess, and managed to cover a lot of ground in the process.
I see here that you've been to Africa, South America, and Australia as well. Oh,
yeah. I mean, as much as I love hunting New Zealand and Oz, there's a lot of stuff out there to do, and I got pretty keen and sort of went on for a couple of decades. So, you want to know what's out there.
What inspired you to write this book, first of all?
I guess I was looking for the kind of book that I would like to read myself. I'm kind of over the technical writing, the how-to and so forth. I mean, you can get that off the web in 5 seconds without having to shell out for a book. You want something that has a bit more depth, a bit more meaning, something that takes you out there, brings you the excitement of being out there, and something that you can think about later on and go, yep, that really worked for me.
And I see the book is not only about hunting, which is our primary objective here, but you've got fly fishing and their game birds, gun dogs, and big game as well.
Well, to me, they're all hunting. I mean, the hunting game birds is still hunting, and fly fishing, particularly the way you do it here in New Zealand, where you're stalking your fish and taking your shot, is not a million miles away from hunting either. So they all have the same kind of atmosphere to them in my book.
Well, about 20 minutes ago when I came off the river, it felt like a million miles away, I can tell you that. Unsuccessful trip, but we won't go there. In fact, thank you for agreeing to do this interview a little bit later so I could get a bit of fishing in before we recorded this.
No worries, mate, I understand.
Yeah. Now, Peter, I'd like to know, what if we were to buy the book, what are we finding out just about you or about hunting in general?
Oh, look, I play myself down a little bit in there because, to be honest, there are a lot of blokes out there who have done a lot more than I have, and as professionals in particular, a lot more. They have a lot more achievements under their belt. But what people can expect to find is what it feels like to be out there. A lot of fellows have written back to me and said, "Look, I've even given this to my wife to read because it explains better than most why we do it, what it's like to be out there, what the rewards are. And a lot of them have said, look, it touched a chord about, a favourite dog they had or a favourite experience they had or whatever. So there is technical information in there, but it's mostly about what it's like to be out there. If anything, it's got a shades of the old Philip Holden style of this is what it's about, not just how to do it.
Now, off air, we were talking a little bit about paperback books and possibly, they're coming to an end. Is there going to be an ebook copy of this available anytime soon?
It's out on Kindle, Kobo, all of the ebook readers. It's out on the whole lot. That's the way of the future.
So what I'll do is I'll put a link up to the Kindle or ebook address for your book on the comment section of this podcast. All you need to do is scroll down, and that link will be there so you can buy this book if you're interested. Peter, you've done a lot of hunting. Can you tell us a couple of good stories? What's some of the stories in your life that really stand out? They don't have to be in New Zealand. They can be anywhere in the world.
Oh, that's a tough one, but look, there is one that's actually in New Zealand, and it's kind of interesting because it's not me being the hero of the piece, but a station that had a really nice herd of fallow on it. It's a big property. It's Otago. Didn't have a lot of pressure, so there were some really nice bucks on there. And before anybody sends letters, I've been picked up for this before. A male fallow is a buck, not a stag, but if you can call them what you like. And I chased this. There was a terrific guy in there, and I chased him for days up through the Matagari and all the rest of it. And he just had his layout a little bit too soft. He knew everything that was going on, but as they do, he eventually made a slip. But I blew it, got the wind slightly wrong, and he was off. And I had the young fellow from the station with me, and I won't name the station because they don't need all the knocking on the door. But he said, come with me, and we jumped in the truck, and he just took off across this terrain. I'll tell you now, I don't know if you've ever seen a cruiser doing sort of 80K over this schist and rocky stuff and down slopes, and, there were times when all you could see through the windscreen was sky. But eventually we came around a bend, and he said, jump out, and we flew down a gully, and I don't know how he did it because we had done kilometres. But somehow or other, he just knew exactly where this big guy was going to go. We got out, made a stalk, came to a point, and the next thing he walks around the corner at about 120 yards. Jeez. So it was routine, bang, down. Now that buck is probably one of the biggest free-range fallow ever to go down in New Zealand, but I don't rate him as mine. I technically I pulled the trigger, but it was all down to this young guy and absolutely epic knowledge of deer behaviour. So that was quite an interesting one for me, and a bit humbling as well, because I thought I knew a thing or two about him, and this guy was all over it.
Interesting you talked about deer behaviour and knowing it. A good chunk of the hunters that listen to this podcast, and it's probably a reasonable percentage, are guys that are new to our sport and wanting to get a little bit more into it, want to hear a bit more about how tips, tricks, and I know tips and tricks is a cliche, but new ideas. What can you tell a new hunter or a guy that's just, or guy or girl for that matter, who's just getting into the sport, what they can do?
Well, my advice may be a little controversial. I get widely accused of being a dinosaur and all these sorts of things. So take it with a grain of salt, but it's what I've learned over 35, 40 years. Most people, most hunters I know shoot rifles that are too big for what they need. They could drop down a gear and they'd actually shoot far better. So a beginner might be better off with a little 7mm08 or my favourite, a 7x57, which won't kick very much, and it'll let them place their shots very nicely. And 90% of those shots are going to be under 250 anyway. The temptation for the big belter that can really reach out and touch something and dial it in on the scope is really pretty marginal. There are places where it's necessary, but there won't be a beginner's starting point. So go a little softer. Put decent bullets in it. A 7x57 with really nice premium controlled expansion bullets in it will perform very nicely on virtually all of our deer. Maybe not the sambar and so forth, but on run-of-the-mill stuff. And I guess the other piece of advice would be camo doesn't make you invisible.
Yep.
Work on the wind. And the wind is doing much trickier things than people think. You go out with a fellow who smokes and you watch the drift of the smoke. In Africa, they use an ash bag, a little fine bag with some very fine ash in it, and they just take it out and give it a shake. And the wind is often doing things you don't think it's doing. A lot of these young guys go out and they're actually carrying a 500-metre deer exclusion zone around them, which maybe is why they need a big rifle, because they only ever see them as dots heading away. Take something you can shoot really comfortably, feed it really top-grade bullets, and camo doesn't make you invisible. In fact, I seldom wear it now except for duck shooting.
You talked then a little bit about that 500-metre exclusion zone, and that's things like smell and sound.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit more in depth about that?
Well, a guy wearing standard old khaki and greens, and a lot of big deer were shot by guys just wearing, basically work clothes. If he moves steadily, it's as much in the way you move as what you're wearing. Someone who moves steadily and doesn't have a particularly jerky sort of approach to terrain and flashing around and showing their face a lot, he's actually going to be less visible to deer than a guy in cams who's running about, moving too fast, not paying attention to the wind. You'll very often get up on a deer 30 yards away, and you'll think that they must be able to see me. But provided you're still, they'll often stand there and just look and puzzle, and they put their nose out. They want the wind. They want the wind to confirm that this object is actually what they think it is. So, they're basically scent animals, not sight animals. And if you put all your faith in cams and don't worry about the wind, it's going to be a long, hard day.
Talking about a different beast, what about pig hunting?
Love pig hunting. I've probably shot my fair share of pigs over the years, I have to say. Here, Australia, Africa, I absolutely love warthog hunting, beyond all thinking, really. I've chased the European wild boars as well. They're all good. They're all fun. And there's always that possibility that if you don't get it quite right, you may get a touch-up, which adds a little mystique to the whole thing.
Yep.
So, no, they're a fantastic animal. They're one of the classic game animals of all time. Anybody who looks down on it is they don't really understand what they're seeing.
It's not a sport that I've ever really taken to, and I'm not sure it's because I don't hunt with dogs, or I've read recently a really good article about hunting without dogs or pig hunting without dogs. Can you give me a little bit of advice? Someone like me who's given it a go, it hasn't really taken to it, still enthusiastic and still willing to try it out?
Well, I mean, it depends on your personal style. Not everybody wants to be, down a gully with a knife and some dogs. I mean, some people like to do the classic, spot and stalk technique. I'm very much that way myself. The idea of an old boar who's got the place wired and you're going to try and pick him up and stalk in on him. That's pretty exciting stuff. But if you just want a pig quickly to take home, it's hard to get away from dogs. So, it's what you like. But New Zealand and to some extent Australia are the real strongholds of dog and knife work. In most places, it's spot and stalk and shoot. I haven't seen much of that kind of stuff in Africa or Europe. It's done differently everywhere. Put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, when we were talking off air, we were talking about women hunters, and a couple of reasons we think they get a bit of a hard time. And I have to say, I agreed with you. We talked about the fact that when women hunters particularly say anything, people are a lot more critical on them and a lot more judgmental. And we've seen examples of this on the show, which I won't go into right now. Can you explain a little bit about what we talked about there?
Look, it's a really interesting thing. It's an ugly thing. I don't quite understand it. But if you look around at some of the things that have happened with young American female hunters, there's been huge backlash. Death threats and the FBI involved and all this sort of stuff. Now, they haven't done anything that's any different to, the dentist from Milwaukee, who might be a 55-year-old guy, and no one really raises an eyebrow. But if it's a young woman, it seems to provoke this enormous response. And I don't quite get it, except that maybe there's a bit of a bullying thing going on. There's a sense that a young woman might be more easily bullied. And the anti-movement, but not just the anti-movement, it's also some of the pro-hunting guys are very down on it as well. I did an interview recently with Craig Boddington, who's very well known in hunting circles, and he remarked on the same thing, that it's because obviously he has a daughter who also hunts, and he said, and this is a guy who's done something like 700 overseas trips. I mean, he does very little but hunt and write about hunting. And he said his daughter gets more hate mail than he does. Gee. So there is something not right about that, but I can't quite explain how it works. I just know it's an ugly thing and we need to keep an eye on it.
Is it the shock value of the unexpected? I think we have the stereotypical hunter, stubbies, singlet, knife in hand, and an old 308. And when we see something that's dramatically different from what we expect, maybe that's why we're hard. When I say we, I'm talking about the proverbial we, not myself. It's a real mentality I'm struggling to understand.
Well, I think that it might be an attempt to, find a soft target. If you're talking about the bloke in the old rugby jersey with the stubbies and an old 308, you can throw some flack at him and it's not going to go far, is it? No. He'll tell you what he thinks pretty quickly, and that's the end of it. But a young girl, I think one of them was like a almost cheerleader type age. I think that the various factions see her as someone they can break. If they can get 10,000 people to blitz her Facebook page or whatever. So it's a kind of bullying. None of this is being done in person. And when people have that keyboard courage, they get ugly. They say things that they probably wouldn't say in real life. But I think that they're seeing someone who they think they can break. And there's something not pretty about that.
I like that analogy, keyboard courage, because I certainly get a lot of people with a lot of keyboard courage emailing me. The neat thing about this show so far is actually I'd say that probably 90% of people that email me are on the positive side of the ledger. But I do find the ones that are negative generally just really I can't see them saying that to my face. No,
I agree. I've had my share of blowback as well, and but it's never happened in person, not in a hunting and fishing store or out on the river or whatever. It doesn't happen, and I think something happens to people when they can be anonymous and say what they like. Maybe it's the truth coming out, but maybe it's also their inadequacies and frustrations coming out. Who knows? Either way, I don't subscribe to it. You can't please all the people all the time, so you just... If you wrestle with pegs, you just get dirty,
Sure, mate. I gave up trying to please everyone a long, long time ago. Now, I see you've got a really good Facebook page, Peter, and I've had a good look down it, and I will put a link to that again on the comment section of this podcast. What sort of feedback and what sort of comments do you get via your Facebook page?
Well, it's interesting that because the book is... it's set in a lot of different places, New Zealand, Australia, New Caledonia, New Guinea, lots of Africa and South America. I get a lot of stuff from around the world, and usually it's people who have been to one of these places and it's helped take them back. It's not so much the beginner who's researching how to. It's more the seasoned type veteran. I just get these nice emails, and I have to say a lot of them are from older guys. Who seem to get the sentimental side of it, the heartfelt side of it, the passion side of it, and they just pop up. You just get an email from a guy in New Mexico or Argentina or wherever, and it's a really nice feeling. I mean, there's no money in this. You do it because of the people you meet. It's not a commercial thing. So yeah, it's nice to get that kind of feedback from around the world. And incidentally, it's actually sold reasonably well around the world. It hit number one in Amazon Australia last week.
Oh, fantastic. So, congratulations.
It's nice for a book from New Zealand to do that, So, yeah, it's just a nice thing to have that sort of feedback from around the world.
And are you getting good numbers into New Zealand as well? Or is it just a similar story that we hear a lot with New Zealand hunting products, that they're selling very well overseas?
I couldn't tell you the exact split. I don't chase the numbers that closely, but as far as I can see, it's probably 70-30. I mean, it has sold well across New Zealand, and it's still in Whitcoulls and PaperPlus and all those places. But I was a little bit surprised to start getting numbers from Germany and all these, England and these sort of places. So I didn't actually expect it to sell overseas at all. I thought it was just a little old book from down under sort of thing. But it's a nice feeling.
Peter, you're also involved with the Christchurch earthquake, and we're not going to delve into this a whole lot because it's a little bit off topic, but can you tell us what your role was with regards to the tragedy or the disaster that was Christchurch?
Oh, it's very simple. I was involved with the emergency centre in all the planning side of things every morning, who's going to do what where, and that stemmed, I think, largely because I was involved in aid projects in Africa, putting in basic services and things, and without sort of being, I don't want to be offensive about it or anything, but in that early stage of the event, there wasn't that much difference between Christchurch and a third world country in terms of where the services were at and so forth. So I think that's probably why I got pulled into the role, having done that kind of stuff over there. But it was the best and the worst of times. It was terrible in terms of the impact, but it was fantastic to see the level of support from across the country and to see people behave differently from they moved off the plane of everyday life. So let's put it that way.
And the volunteers that were involved were incredible.
They were. I mean, without, again, going into any detail, natural disasters don't change people. They magnify who they are. The great ones become heroic. The sleazy ones become even more sleazy. It's like a giant magnifying glass. It just takes whoever you are and makes it bigger.
And I actually think that our sport does that a little bit as well.
Yes, it does.
Sorry, that was a bit of a surprise segue there for you, but I do. I really think our sport does bring that a lot out in people. Not
at all, because I do a fair bit of writing for Fish and Game, and the editor there, Bob South, he's always on to me to do a piece about how the fishing and hunting sports, if you have the right attitude, they can lift you up from who you were to maybe someone a little bit more grown up. I'm talking about in the sense that you have to have a lot of perseverance, patience, discipline. Do I take this shot? Do I not? Do I let him walk? Do I not? You do enough of those choices, and it starts to change who you are. So I don't want to get too corny and metaphysical about it, but there's definitely an angle there that when you meet the guys who have done a lot, they generally only have gone two ways in their life. They've either become really outstanding individuals, good buggers, or they've become a bit slippery. And thankfully, the vast majority become good buggers.
And I think that's a really good point, and I'm going to mention this thing I'm very passionate about, which is our youth. And I think that hunting gives them that better understanding of the world around them, lets them understand where food comes from, where meat comes from, the sacrifice made for all those things. And I think it becomes ingrained in them, and I personally believe it makes them better adults.
Oh, absolutely. Apart from anything else, it's very humbling. You're a very small thing out there in a very big landscape, and you'll very soon learn, how little you count for very much. And so the idea of getting a bit big for your boots and getting a bit pompous and a bit carried away with how special you are, the river doesn't care, the mountains don't care, the animals don't care. They all show you where you fit in very, very quickly. It's
interesting. I've mentioned this before on another show, but it's like what Pete Salter said in the first paragraph of his book, and it was very much... And sorry to promote someone else's book in the middle of yours, but it was very much there's no going back after shooting that first animal. You're changed forever. And I'm sure you've got very vivid memories of that first animal you shot.
I do. In fact, it's the first. It's the opening of the book as a wee lad of about 10 or 12. But you've touched on a really interesting point there, and that's responsibility. You have hunters own what they do. You take a life. It's you did this, whereas the modern trend is to not be responsible for what you do. There's always an excuse, there's always a reason, there's always a way out. but hunting teaches you absolute responsibility. I did this for better or worse. It was me, and so it had better damn well be a good reason, you know. And that's something that isn't, without wanting to sound like, you know, some kind of old codger lecturing forward. It's something that's getting rarer, and hunting gives it to you. Whereas, you know, you meet a lot of people who don't have it. They just don't own what they did.
Peter, you've been a fantastic interview. Thank you very much for, one, giving of your time. I know that you've got a young family and time is precious. And I look forward to reading your book. I do a lot of reading, so I'm really looking forward to that copy you send me. And please autograph it.
I will.
Yeah.
No worries.
Just so I've got a copy, I can say, I've interviewed that guy. See, I'm feeling more humble than you are as my interviewee. And I look for, is there another edition coming? Are you going to write another one?
Look, I really don't know the answer. I'm doing a ton of magazine work at the moment. I've got Grey Sporting Journal out at the moment. I've got Fish and Game. I've got a lot of magazine work on, but I certainly won't rule it out. But, I mean, between all the kudus and the buffaloes and all the deer and all the things in this book, I need to go and get some more material, don't I?
Absolutely. In fact, are you ever in the central North Island, Taupo?
Yeah, I am. I was actually there only a few months ago. I scored a really nice sea cat, so I dropped it into Burns.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's where I live. So next time you're in this part of the world, please look me up and maybe we could go for a wander.
That'd be awesome. I'd look forward to that.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Cheers, mate. Have a good night.
We'll be giving a copy of Peter's book away on our Facebook page. All you need to do is search The Hunting Show on Facebook or find www.thehuntingshow.co.nz, and there's a link to our Facebook page on there. If you're not on Facebook, please, all you need to do is email me, find out how to win it, info@thehuntingshow.co.nz. That's another successful show. I'm not going to bleat on. Well done, guys. Thank you for listening. Good hunting.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location, from a secret hunting spot known only to him, and the guy who told him about it, and possibly the guy who told the guy who told him. It's a show all about hunting in New Zealand and around the globe. This is The Hunting Show. Find The Hunting Show on Facebook and Twitter.